The chair calls the Education Policy Committee to order for Tuesday, February 24th, 2026. The committee legislative assistant will note the roll. We have a quorum present. We do have a quorum. Representative Mueller, have you had a chance to review the minutes for Wednesday, February 18th? And if so, would you approve the minutes?
I do, Madam Chair, and I would move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Representative Mueller moves to approve the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay. And the ayes have it. The minutes for Wednesday, February 18th, 2026 are approved. Members, the first bill on the agenda is House File 3489. While I move to the testifiers table, Representative Mueller is going to assume the gavel. Better bring my bill with me.
Sydney, you sound like me. Excellent. See, it's fantastic. Okay. And while Chair Bennett gets settled, the chair moves House File 3489 be referred to the Committee on Public Safety. And Chair Bennett, there is an author's amendment. The chair moves A1 amendment to put the bill in the shape of the author prefers. Any discussion or description of your A1 amendment, Madam Chair?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this amendment just is starting to tweak the language on some definitions here for grooming. So I'd love to see it go on to the bill.
Questions or discussions on the A1 amendment? All those in favor of the A1 amendment, please say aye. All those opposed, say nay. All right, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Chair Bennett, please present your bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'm just going to give a quick overview, and then I'm going to ask Ms. Para if she would just kind of walk us through some of the main technical points. But members, this bill strengthens protections for students against sexual grooming. This is an important issue overall. I'm sure we've all heard of situations with students in school who have experienced this, sadly. I have one former student here sitting right next to me, as well as a detective, who's been working on some cases with this type of thing. But I will share, too, that I personally, too, when I was in high school as a 10th grader, was groomed by my band director. And it's something that it still sticks with me today. So it is a really important issue. So what this bill does, it makes clear field trip supervision rules, creates a new felony offense for child grooming, improves mandatory reporting to include grooming, and enhances training to include grooming. So I'm wondering, Madam Chair, if Ms. Para could just walk us through some of the main points here.
And thank you, Representative Bennett. Christina Parr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, House File 3489, and there is a description, a summary in your packets, members. Section 1 of the bill prohibits a school employee, independent contractor, or volunteer from being alone with a student during a field trip. Sections 2 and 3 modify a licensing statute, 122A20, relating to teacher licenses. So Section 2 adds grooming to the list of offenses that if a teacher is convicted of, triggers an automatic denial, refusal to renew, or revocation without a right to a hearing. Section 3 requires law enforcement to notify the appropriate licensing board when a teacher is criminally charged with one of those triggering offenses, where the teacher's license would be automatically denied, not renewed or revoked, or with any other offense that requires the person to register as a predatory offender. Sections 4, 5, and 6 and 7 are Chapter 260E statutes. So Section 4 requires the Commissioner of Education to develop training for mandatory reporters and specifies certain content that must be included. Sections 5, 6, and 7 clarify that maltreatment allegations that are more than 3 years old may be investigated. And then Sections 8, 9, and 10 are part of the criminal code, with Section 8 defining the term pattern for purposes of the statute on solicitation of children to engage in sexual conduct and communication of sexually explicit materials to children. Section 9 establishes the grooming offense, and Section 10 establishes the criminal penalties for the grooming offense. And if there are any questions about the Chapter 260E offenses, my colleague Sarah Sunderman is available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Para. And thank you, Chair Bennett. We do have some testifiers. If it's okay for us to go to your testifiers at this point.
I would love to introduce them. Thank you, Madam Chair. And before I do, I'm not sure if this is appropriate, but I'm going to do it anyway. But I would like to recognize that we have WCCO here and reporter Jennifer Mayerly, because she did a number of segments on this issue back, I think it was in the fall of last year. And it's why I came to know about Hannah and Detective Chad Clausen as well, and came to work on this. It's been a passion of mine for quite some time, but hearing Hannah's situation, so close to my situation, it happened to me a generation ago, which it makes me sad that this is still ongoing. So I want to thank Jennifer for that too from WCCO. But we'll start with Hannah Lopresto if we could, Madam Chair.
And thank you so much. Please state your name for the record and go ahead with your testimony.
My name is Hannah Lopresto. I'm a victim survivor of grooming and sexual assaults by my high school band teacher when I was a student from 2012 to 2016 at Egan High School. Co-chairs Bennett and Jordan and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm speaking in support of House File 3489. As a high schooler, I played percussion and had the same band teacher each year. Early on, this teacher made me feel special by asking me to help him organize music or move instruments after class. Over the course of the 4 years, he slowly began to isolate me from friends and family, normalized touching me and communicating as if we were close friends. On an international band trip to Greece, this escalated to him showing a romantic interest in me. Manipulating seating charts so I was always next to him on the airplane, pulling me away from the group on tours, and slipping a secret note in my suitcase. Back at school, he used religion as a form of control and made me believe that I had to marry him because of the things I had done. On the morning of my last day of high school, he sexually assaulted me in the band lesson room. He put his hands down the back of my pants and the front of my shirt. I froze and I cried. I graduated the next day, and the abuse continued into my early college years. Due to the years of grooming, I believe that I was an active participant in my abuse and that I had caused it to happen. I did not tell anyone the full story until Detective Chad Clausen from the Egan Police Department found me during the investigation into this teacher in 2022. My story exposed numerous gaps in our state laws that need to be strengthened to better protect K-12 students from sexual abuse, especially when it involves educator misconduct. There's 2 topics in this bill that I'll speak to in the interest of time: mandated reporter training and establishing the grooming of children as a felony. In the police investigation for my case, there were educators in the school who observed concerning patterns of behavior and didn't report it. I do not believe that these individuals had ill will. I believe that they didn't know what grooming was or how to identify the signs, and that better training would have solved this. Lastly, I want to speak to the portion of this bill proposing the grooming of children as a felony. Often, when I share that I was groomed and sexually assaulted, most people focus in on the sexual assaults as being the most horrific and impactful. But for me, the 5+ years of grooming were even more harmful to my long-term health and well-being. It was years of psychological manipulation that harmed my understanding of intimate relationships, my own value, and my ability to trust others. Establishing the grooming of children as a felony can prevent abuse from escalating to sexual assaults, and it recognizes that grooming alone causes substantial harm to a child. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. That's a really powerful testimony, and we are really sorry that that happened. Detective Chad Clausen, would state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
My name is Chad Clausen. I'm a detective with the Egan Police Department. Co-chairs Bennett and Jordan and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of House File 3489. I'm the detective who investigated Hannah's case. Although there were no criminal charges, that outcome was not due to a lack of probable cause. It was due to gaps in Minnesota laws in 2016 regarding positions of authority in high school students. Some of those gaps were addressed in 2021, but others remain, many of which are included in this bill. First, field trips. Isolation was a key factor in Hannah's experience. Field trips, especially overnight trips, create predictable opportunities for one adult to be alone with one student. This proposal does not eliminate field trips or burden schools. It sets a clear statewide expectation that no school employee, contractor, or volunteer is alone with the student during a school-sanctioned trip. This protects both students and staff. Minnesota Department of Education investigations. Delayed disclosure is a common in grooming and child sexual abuse cases, and this was true with Hannah. I first interviewed Hannah in April of 2022, nearly 6 years after she graduated high school. Because of the 3-year limitation, Hannah was never interviewed by MDVE investigators. Preventing investigations solely based on time protects offenders, not children. Removing the 3-year limit restores the professional judgment to MDE investigators, allowing them to comprehensively investigate all student maltreatment. Grooming is a standalone crime. 12 states have criminalized grooming a minor with intent to sexually abuse them as a felony. Grooming is the slow process of building a false, trusting relationship with the child to facilitate future sexual abuse, whether or not the physical abuse actually occurs. Waiting for physical abuse means waiting for more harm. This law allows early intervention. Finally, defining the student. Many K-12 students remain enrolled past the age of 18. The power imbalances between teacher and student does not disappear with the birthday. This ensures equal protection for all enrolled students. In closing, these proposals are practical, preventative, and focused on child safety. They target predatory behaviors, not educators. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I do have a third testifier signed up, Deb Corehouse from Education Minnesota. If you would come to the testifier stand. Thank you. Please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Deb Corehouse. I'm an attorney with Education Minnesota, speaking on sections 1 through 7 of House File 3489 today. Members of the committee, Madam Chair, we support the additional training components envisioned in this bill. We provide this training to our members, and historically, it has been one of the most requested, meaning educators and their union leaders are seeking out more training on this topic. It is important for mandatory reporters to have this information in order to meet their obligations. On the proposed field trip law, we also support the general idea that students and staff alike are both safer if they are interacting in a place where they can be observed by others. We do want to note, however, that there are many times on field trips where staff may need to be alone with the student in order to keep that student safe. This might be in a situation where a student elopes from the group, a student needs assistance with personal cares in a private restroom, the student has an emotional issue that must be addressed confidentially, a private phone call home must be made, the student may need medication or another medical intervention, etc. We would suggest that the language be clear that there are exceptions for emergencies, student health and safety, confidentiality, etc. We also note that many times our members are not the individuals in charge of setting up the staffing ratios and should not be penalized if the system is not providing sufficient coverage in order to assure that there are multiple staff in certain settings. We thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. At this time, and thank you to the testifiers, at this time, this concludes public testimony. Members, are there any questions about the bill for any of our testifiers, for Representative Bennett? Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I hope everyone will excuse my voice today. It's evading me. I just want to thank you, Chair Bennett, for your work on this. It's been something that you and I have been working on for quite a few months now, and I think the discussion of this bill will probably drip into the next bill as well. This is obviously a big problem in that we, if it happens to even one student, and we have the detective here testifying that it's happened to at least 2 students. So I'm glad that we're able to address this today. This isn't a typical bill that we hear in this committee, so it's interesting to see how it goes, but I think it's a great bill, and I'm sure we'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Chair Jordan. Let's see, next on our list is Representative Keeler.
Thanks. Sorry to go in front of you, Chair Jordan. Absolutely, we need to do this. I do want to say thank you for having courage to come and share your story. I think that in a space like this, it is very hard to do that. And I think the only way we stop the bad from happening is to talk about it. And so I'm really proud of you. I just want to say that. I know how hard it can be. I do just have a question, and I sort of following up with what they just said around, you know, like IEPs, and there's some students who need an individual support. I think I heard you say you're willing to work on, you know, making sure we address those. I guess that's the only question that I have is this going to put more cost back on the schools because they have to send multiple people? You know, like you think of a coach going with a group of a team, like they wouldn't maybe typically send an assistant coach or another coach. What kind of financial obligations would fall back on a school by having to send more people? Have we done any assessment of that? Again, I agree we need to do this, just from a financial impact back on schools. What would that look like?
Chair Bennett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's a very good question. I have not heard any issues from schools yet, but it may come up. And I think as these issues come up, we'll need to work on them. In particular, what Ed Minnesota brought up, I think there likely would be some exceptions for particular health issues and that type of thing that we can deal with. As for cost to schools, my guess is most of the time schools now have more than one person with. We'll have to see if they have issue with that, and we'll work on it. So that's, I guess I'm willing to work with many people. We want to make this right and make it work for schools and staff, but most of all, we want to make it work for our students so that they don't have to experience what Hannah and myself and many others have experienced. Thank you, good question.
Representative Keeler, follow up.
Yep, just one last verifying question. I didn't see it in here. This would be for all students, K-12. This isn't just middle school or high school, right? Because we see grooming tactics start as early as kindergarten. Can you just verify that this was intent for the entire schools?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Thanks, Chair.
I have next on our list, Representative Green.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, Chair Bennett, for bringing this bill forward. And I echo what Rep. Keeler said, Hannah. So I'm just really proud of you, and I hope that you feel that walking out of here and how empowering this can be. So thank you so much for sharing your story. I just had a clarification. I know a lot of times we have coaches or clubs at schools or weird groups that get together to go travel with students that maybe don't fall in the exact category. Like maybe they're approved, they're a parent helper. I guess that would fall under volunteers. I just wanted to make sure like coaches and every adult is included in this.
Madam Chair.
Chair Bennett.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if I could just have Ms. Para maybe note who this loops in, because I do believe it loops volunteers and coaches.
Christina Para. Or if it has.
Or, yeah,
Yeah,
whoever.
okay, go ahead.
Madam Chair, Representative Green, so the field trip policy does apply to employees, independent contractors, volunteers. Are you referring to the maltreatment portions or?
Representative Green.
Yep, thank you, Chair. I was referring to the field trip piece where it's called out that coaches would be included in that, or clubs, right? Like, not everything falls under the Minnesota State High School League under like a school employee. And so sometimes you have, you could have a coach, the head coach could be paid by the school, but then you could have 3 assistant coaches, and maybe one's paid by the boosters, maybe one's paid by somewhere else. And so I just want to make sure that we are covered, that if it's a school-sanctioned event, which I think that's in statute what that definition is. Maybe it's something we just need to take a moment and look at more to make sure that we're covered.
Christina Para.
Madam Chair, Representative Green, so I believe all the persons that you classified would be covered. I think the question is whether the field trip includes an extracurricular activity. And there is a definition in statute of extracurricular, but that would be different from a field trip.
Representative Green, any follow-up?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I would love to just get a little bit more clarification on that piece. I am very much in support of this bill, but I think it would behoove us to just take a look at that and just make sure we're covered so that any interaction with an adult when they're outside of the school grounds on a field trip in particular are covered.
Chair Bennett, any comments on?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We will definitely look into that, and, and it needs to be under the umbrella of a school K-12 activity, but definitely something to look into, so we'll do that. Thank you.
And next on the list, I have Representative Godfrey.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chair Bennett, for bringing this forward, and thank you for your testimony. Representative Green actually covered a lot of the things that I was going to talk about, ask about. Bit of a personal story. Not me personally, but a lot of folks in my life growing up. Upon reflection, have learned that they were in fact victims of grooming. So it sounds like there's been a couple of investigations, but this is an abhorrent practice that is all too common. And so I want to thank you for telling your story, and I want to thank you for bringing this legislation forward. Thank you.
I do not have any more members on my list, so at this point, thank you, members. Madam Chair, any final comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd just like to thank Hannah Lepresto and Detective Clausen for being here. And like everybody said, Hannah for her bravery in speaking out, because that's what we need to make things move forward like this. I'm looking forward to more work as this moves on to the Public Safety Committee. We need to tighten some things up, definitions, looking at the field trips, extracurricular activities, and so on, so we make this right. And then, as a former teacher of 33 years, I want to add that the vast majority of teachers do not groom our children. They care about them deeply, and I know that. And I want to thank our teachers. But it happens enough, as you say, this is common enough where we need to deal with it. We will not condone it, and let's have a good law that makes sure we keep kids away from these kinds of predators. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you,
And
Chair
committee.
Bennett. At this point, then, the chair would renew the motion to refer House File 3489 as amended to the Committee on Public Safety. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and House File 3489, as amended, is referred to Committee on Public Safety. At this point, I'm now going to return the gavel to Chair Bennett, so give us a second here.
There we go. Thank you, members. The next item we have on our agenda will be a presentation by the Minnesota Department of Education. So I'll have them move forward while I can introduce them. The presentation should have two parts. The first part should relate to the proposed statewide standards for health education, and then also an update on implementation of the new social studies standards and ethnic course offering requirement. I'll ask that MDE, we know them well, but we'll have them identify themselves for the record and begin their presentation. Thanks for joining us and being here to inform us on what's going on at MDE. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Bobby Burnham, and I serve as the Assistant Commissioner for the Office of Teaching and Learning. Thank you, committee members, for having us here today to provide updates on two very important initiatives going on. We have been having some slight issues.
We'll give you a moment while you get your technology up here.
Okay,
So
thank you, Madam Chair.
everybody can take a good breath. Thank you to our pages who help out with these wonderful technical issues. There we go. Look at that, the magic touch. All right. Go ahead and proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So throughout the development of the health standards and implementation of the social studies standards, Minnesotans have provided some very valuable feedback. So our 10 commitments of equity are highlighting the value people aspect. Next slide. I would like to first give a quick overview of the process related to the revision and approval of academic standards. The purpose of all standards and benchmarks, of course, is to set expectations for achievement of students at each grade level in math, arts, science, language arts, physical education, social studies, and now health. We work to provide a progression of learning as well as define the requirements for credit courses required for graduation. The commissioner and standards shall not prescribe the delivery system, the classroom assessments, or form of instruction that school sites must use. Detailing how health standards satisfy the legislative requirements of all standards to be clear, concise, objective, measurable, and grade level specific. Through definitions, accessible meaning assessments, and actionable. The second bullet, vertical alignment, allows districts, schools, and teachers to plan learning progression more thoughtfully and allows families to follow student learning more clearly. The contributions of college and career readiness are important to the standards revision process. We must also examine the alignment of each required academic standard and related benchmark with the knowledge and skills students need for college and career readiness. We also must include contributions of the Minnesota American Indian tribes and communities, including urban indigenous communities, as related to the academic standards during the review and revision process. The requirements of each academic standards revision committee membership are outlined on this slide. Of course, they must include the advice from the following stakeholders, including parents of school-aged children and members of the public throughout the state, as well as teachers, currently serving members of local school boards and charter schools, faculty teaching course subjects at post-secondary institutions, representatives of the Minnesota business community, as well as representatives of the Tribal Nations Education Committee and Tribal Nations and Communities in Minnesota, including both Anishinaabe and Dakota. And of course, students, with the input from the Minnesota Youth Council. The components of all academic standards include college and career, college and community readiness, the our framework, the Minnesota American Indian tribes and communities, including urban indigenous communities. They must embed technology and information literacy standards, as well as integrate ethnic studies throughout. Our health standards are aligned with the first standard being functional health knowledge. As you will see in a few slides ahead here, the functional health knowledge provides the what, or the content, while the skill standards, standards 2 through 8, will provide the how, the behaviors of students, the behaviors and abilities that students need. By applying functional health knowledge and essential health skills in authentic, relevant scenarios, such as advocating for safer environments, supporting peers' mental health, or participating in community health initiatives, students see the relevance to their own lives and gain the capacity to positively impact the well-being of those around them. This approach strengthens health literacy and ensures students are equipped to thrive in higher education, in the workplace, and are engaged, responsible members of their communities. The essential health skills provide a framework for instruction by breaking down the steps students need to apply to their daily lives. Intentionally integrating the essential health skills standards, such as analyzing influences, accessing reliable information, communicating effectively, making decisions, setting goals, applying healthy practices, and promoting well-being, equips students with transferable skills that extend far beyond the health classroom. Through this structure, students gain more than just information. They build confidence and competence needed to apply what they have learned across a variety of health topics, fostering success in career, college pathways, and active participation in their communities. Specifically, we'll cover information on the health standards at this point. The legislature is committed to establishing rigorous academic standards for Minnesota's public schools students in subject areas outlined on this slide, including health. The proposed standards fulfill legislative requirements established in Minnesota statute back in 2024, ensuring that all Minnesotan students receive a well-rounded education that includes statewide health education standards. The legislation also required that we include our important partners from the Department of Health and the Department of Human Services, as well as the Office of Cannabis Management, our partners at Minnesota Management and Budget, as well as the Department of Public Safety. We're all key contributors to this process. The statute required certain content areas for the health standards. Statewide standards in health must include the following expectations for learning: cardiopulmonary resuscitation and automatic external defibrillator education that allows districts to provide instruction to students in grades 7 through 12. Vaping awareness and prevention education that allows districts to provide instruction to students in grades 6 through 8. Cannabis use and substance use education that allows districts to provide instruction in grades 6 through 12. Sexually transmitted infections and diseases education that meets the requirements of the statute. And mental health education for students in grades 4 through 12. That is inclusive of prevention of suicide or self-harm and mental health components. Other possible health-related subject areas include, child sexual abuse and prevention, violence prevention, education, character development education, safe and supportive school education, as well as other expectations for learning such as nutrition. All of these areas are addressed in the final version of the academic health standards. Legislation, required addressing cannabis, and the commissioner in consultation with our partners at the Health and Human Services, local school districts, and education specialists helped or supported the identification of one or more model programs that may be used to educate middle and high school students on health effects on children and adolescents of cannabis and substance abuse. This list was compiled and is now posted, as you can see in the link on this slide, compiled by a contractor and viewed by the Standards Committee in the spring of '25. Required cannabis and fentanyl information is covered by the proposed health standards. However, implementation of that information starts in the upcoming school year, and proposed implementation of the standards in 2028-29. Once the standards are fully implemented, the statute will be fulfilled through the health standards implementation. Mental health is another area required in legislation. Similar to the cannabis legislation, MDE has released guidance around the implementation. Please note, again, that the required mental health information is covered by the proposed health standards. However, implementation of that information starts in the upcoming school year, and proposed implementation of the standards in 28-29. These next two slides will provide a timeline of the tasks completed by the Standards Committee in the development of the health standards. I'm just going to highlight a few of these. The first being the first round of public feedback, which occurred in December of '24 through January of '25. The second round of feedback occurring through the Court of Administrative Hearings in April of '25. And again, the last round of public comments occurred in March through April. Many levels of feedback were sought out to provide feedback to the Standards Committee. The third draft of the proposed Minnesota K-12 academic standards in health represents a comprehensive refinement from draft one based on national expert reviews and extensive educator feedback. Revisions focused on ensuring developmental and age appropriateness, reducing redundancy, strengthening alignment with national frameworks, and evaluating the rigor and coherence of the benchmarks to better support instruction and student health literacy. Again, this is a few details regarding the review process. It involves both local and national review, which includes identifying and comparing current standards locally and nationally, including in other states and countries, and national reports of significance, and utilizing initial public survey about current implementation. Draft one focused on the college and career readiness statement and anchor standards base structure of strands and anchor standards for all grades. Then we had the public review comment. Draft two of the standards and benchmarks, public review and comment period. We had both online feedback and targeted feedback, and the third version submitted to the Commissioner of MDE, MDH, and DHS for rulemaking. Rulemaking process includes public feedback opportunities as well, including a hearing. The approval of the standards is through the administrative law judge in rulemaking, and we expect a hearing date to be set fairly soon. Based on the most recent research in how students learn health, the proposed standards are designed to build essential health skills coordinated with content, will help districts streamline the required implementation of at least 10 separate health education related statutes, will utilize anchor standards across K-12, allowing for a clearer vertical progression of content and skills. This approach is consistent with other content areas as well. It will intentionally integrate the essential health skills such as analyzing influences, accessing reliable information, communicating effectively, making decisions, setting goals, applying healthy practices, and promoting well-being, which equips students with transferable skills that extend far beyond the health classroom. This next slide will just give you the difference between an academic standard or anchor standard and a benchmark. And the next slide, again, outlines the first strand being the use of functional health knowledge to enhance health and well-being. That is the what behind our health standards. And the how is students will be able to analyze influences that affect health and well-being, access valid and reliable information, products, and services to enhance health and well-being, demonstrate interpersonal communication skills to enhance health and well-being, demonstrate decision-making skills, as well as goal-setting skills and practices and behaviors that promote and enhance well-being and promote health, safety, and well-being of self and others. The benchmarks, the standards, and the benchmark organizations include the number of benchmarks in each grade level, K through 5, as well as the grade band of 6 through 8 and the grade band of 9 through 12. The benchmark organization is in strands including food and nutrition, human growth and development and sexual health, mental and emotional health, personal health and wellness, personal safety and violence prevention, substance use awareness and prevention. This concludes the presentation on the health standards.
Appreciate the presentation. And before we go to member, okay, would you like to continue? The suggestion is to go through the entire thing and then we'll have testifiers. Would that work for you?
Yeah, that would be fine, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Go ahead and continue. Thank you.
Okay. The next topic area is ethnic studies, and just a reminder that ethnic studies and statute are to be integrated across all academic content areas. And are embedded under the umbrella of the social studies standards. So I'm going to give a few overview slides on the social studies standards. The 2021 social studies standards represent a shift in how the content may be taught, and this shift prioritizes these areas. It centers student inquiry, emphasizing disciplinary literacy, K through 8, fully interdisciplinary, no identified lead disciplines, as well as adds that ethnic studies strand. In support of the implementation of the social studies standards, all support efforts and professional development efforts focus on these skills and competencies in our professional development. Understanding context, causes, and impact of the present day, lessons that meet benchmarks without overwhelming teachers, strategies for making content relevant to student lives, leading discussions on challenging topics with sensitivity and respect, incorporating Indigenous and marginalized voices into social studies education, teaching students how to analyze and evaluate primary sources, as well as developing time-efficient lesson plans that still have impact. All of this is under the framework that we are using, and it's centering student inquiry. It's the inquiry design model blueprint. To center student inquiry, as required by the social studies standards, Minnesota has adopted a blueprint for instruction referred to as the inquiry design model. Minnesota's blueprint or outline is consistent with national guidance and examples from the National Council for Social Studies, also known as the College, Career, and Civic Life C3 framework. The inquiry design model is a research-based, teacher-friendly framework creating inquiry-based social study lessons in units, centering on a compelling question and a one-page blueprint. It guides students through investigating, analyzing sources, and constructing evidence-based arguments aligned with the C3 framework and the National Council of Social Studies standards. Our implementation efforts around social studies have been in place for quite some time as they are being implemented, and it includes multiple partnerships. This slide indicates a partnership that we currently have with the Minnesota Humanities Center, and it is a year-long program that is a professional learning series presented in a partnership between MDE and the Humanities Center, supporting implementation of Minnesota social studies standards, and it offers a combination of live, Zoom, and on-demand Canvas courses, which are asynchronous. The need around this shows that only 1 in 5 secondary social studies teachers nationally has engaged in content-based PD in the past 5 years. Over half of the learning issue is funded and is not funded and is outside teacher contract hours. Most available materials are supplementary, not comprehensive core curriculum. And this series that we are in partnership with is really creating and filling a gap. Monthly deep dives into one of the 9 defined areas in the Minnesota Academic Standards and Social Studies, content sessions, pedagogy sessions, and partnership with the Humanities Center really provides a structured collaboration for teachers in developing their own curriculum. This began in September of 25. There have been 116 active educators, but that likely is higher because many of the participants are curriculum directors or department chairs using the content and professional learning communities. Other supports include conference presentations, which you can see in the first top part of this slide, as well as that continued partnership with the Minnesota Humanities Center. We also have a social studies curriculum leader network, and this is to build district and school level capacity to implement the standards with coherence and consistency. It meets monthly during the school year, and the statewide network of district and school leaders, charter networks, co-ops, and partner organizations are included. This is a multi-year focus. The focus for 24-25 has unpacked revised standards by strand, introduced key support partners, and the 25-26 building standards aligned curriculum using the IDM framework. Resource development is being supported with that partnership with the Humanities Centers. The reach of this leader network is 70 school districts, 4 service cooperatives, 20 charter schools, and 8 social studies organizations and pre-service. The next slide just reminds us all what is in statute as the definition of ethnic studies and the course requirement. The credit equivalency may fulfill a social studies, language arts, math, or science credit if the course meets the applicable state academic standards in the subject for which students are being granted credit. It may also fulfill an elective credit if the course meets applicable standards or other local requirements. Courses meeting graduation requirements must cover all required standards and benchmarks in each of the content areas. Ethnic studies work in 2014 included the Ethnic Studies Working Group, gathering and incorporating public feedback, and drafting the Ethnic Studies Grant Program alongside our grant unit. Then the work in 2025, we implemented or administered the first round of grants, and those applicants really served as our focused pilot group of districts to look at and provide us feedback with a set of guidance documents that have been developed in partnership with the working group and partners as well with the public feedback. And then in the ethnic studies course development for the second round of grants, round 1 was the competitive ethnic studies, grades 5 through 12 courses, community-centered knowledge competitive grants. Specifically identified the purpose of the grant as to support schools and charters in the development, evaluation, and implementation of the ethnic studies courses as outlined in statute. Requests for funding to support the design of high school ethnic studies courses receive priority over requests for funding to build out the 5-8 ethnic studies program. With the ethnic studies 5 through 12 course community-centered knowledge competitive grants, which is round 2, the purpose of the grant is to support districts and charters in the development, evaluation, and implementation of the new grades 5 through 12 ethnic studies courses. The grant provides 3 levels of support: inter-district collaborations, district-level applicants, and school-level applicants. And that concludes the presentation on the ethnic studies update as part of the social studies implementation.
Wonderful, thank you for that. And now, before we go to member comments or questions, we just have a couple of testifiers. So if I could maybe have the two of you just step back for a moment, and we will have Michael McCarthy and Catherine Kirsten come on up. You can just both come up together, and we'll start with Mr. McCarthy. Whenever you get settled in there, just introduce yourself for the record, and then you may begin.
Deep breath. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Michael McCarthy. I'm here on behalf of Fixing Stillwater Schools, a small parents school improvement group in Stillwater, Minnesota. I'm waiting for my pulse to drop a little bit because I have 50 years' experience in government. I've been on the giving and receiving end of rulemakings, and as lawmakers, you're here today to unfortunately have to fix another problem. The legislature assigned the Minnesota Department of Education a task. They said, come up with rule benchmarks, rule standards and benchmarks for health education K through 12. They've been at it for a year and a half, almost 2 years. I did submit testimony last night. I'm going to just very briefly refer everyone who's watching this to page 2. There's a diagram. And the diagram is from the Minnesota Department of Education, and it shows what the rulemaking process that they've just reported on is all about. And you'll see in the center is what they've called the functional health knowledge. This is the what of what will be taught. And everything else hangs on the functional health knowledge. Now, I challenge you in the materials you just listened to, or anything you've been presented or will see, what that functional health knowledge is. It's absent. It's an empty shell. Now, the question I have as a citizen looking at this is this state agency who's doing your bidding on behalf of me as a state citizen, are they either unwilling to say what that knowledge is, or after a year and a half, are they incapable of saying what that knowledge is? Because as they plainly said, everything builds on the knowledge to be presented. Everything builds on the knowledge to be presented, and it's not there. I direct, Madam Chair, the members to the rule that underpins this. It's available on the MDE website. It's 2 pages long. You'll see a really short list of 5 little odds and ends at the bottom of page 2, but importantly, at the top of page 2 is line 2.2, and it says, and other stuff. Doesn't quite say it that way, but that's the intent of it. We'll get to this stuff after the rulemaking. We'll tell you what the knowledge is after the rulemaking. So this would be like you passing a law that says, here's a law, we're going to implement it, it will be mandatory for 10 years, every corner of the state to every citizen, but we'll tell you what it is later. Just pass it. That would not pass the straight face test. And that's what we're confronted with needing fixing today. And very fortunately, HR 3550 will give us a safety relief valve. I would be pleased to have a longer opportunity to walk through some of the testimony that's filed in front of you. I will just simply say this is and I will say in 5 decades of federal and state experience, this is the most badly executed rulemaking I've ever seen. And on pages 3, 4, and 5 of the testimony I left you is a list of things wrong with the process, things that are kept from the public eye, things that are not in the record for the ALJ to say at the upcoming hearing. It is just fantastic. Now, why would this be? Why would things not be open to the public? Why would there not be a broad set of engagement? Well, some people are suspicious. I have filed my filings under the assumption that there is just some incapacity. There just wasn't a skill set to carry this out. They didn't know where to get subject matter experts in health and safety. And in the testimony that's referenced on page 1 that I submitted, 43 pages to the Department of Commerce, we tell them where they can find some of these subject matter experts to fill in the missing knowledge, which they seem to have been able to do. But some people feel that there could be a more nefarious aspect to this. And why would we think that? Well, last summer, there was an initial draft of this material. Draft 2 is what is referred to in my content and in the Minnesota Department of Education's content. And in draft 2, for the first time, they did unveil the standards and the benchmarks that would go under the rule. And it included a very progressive agenda. It was a very politically social progressive document. It included benchmarks, and these are things that are mandatory to advance to the next grade and to graduate. Things like kindergartners and first graders affirming multigenderism and transgenderism as first graders, as a requirement of the state of Minnesota to advance to the next grade. And in fact, there were, I believe, 137 sexual health related benchmarks from K through 12. Now, they got, in their sonar, their report, up to 8,000 comments, which we haven't seen because they've kept them secret. 8,000 comments. I've never heard in the state of Minnesota of a rulemaking getting 8,000 comments. Now, they kept them secret, but I'm going to assume maybe they weren't happy comments, that there was some pushback on that agenda, using health standards as a progressive, indoctrination tool. So they hired 3 experts. Again, you can see this is called out in my comments in the sonar. They take 3 pages and they brag, we hired 3 outside experts, we overhauled this thing, and now we're going forward with it. I'll also note, the experts are secret and not identified, nor their affiliations. There's just an awful lot of non-disclosure going on in this whole process. But the outcome was the current 2-page rule, which is an empty shell, provides no access to what will be taught, the vital what that everything else hinges on. And they did put out standards and benchmarks. And even the progressive filer said this stuff is so vague, we can't tell what's supposed to be done with it. It's just an empty shell. Now, why would that be? Well, if the suspicious people are right, and this is a matter of not being unable to provide this knowledge after a year and a half, but it's a matter of being unwilling to subject this to public scrutiny, one might construe logically that what's happening is that material from last summer is going to magically reappear and get reinserted outside of public view, outside of public scrutiny, in the dark closets of the back rooms of the MDE building. And that's just not right. And then that would be mandatory. Every school board in the state would be overridden, their decision-making would be taken away and replaced by this vital, important, not to be missed information, which we just can't see. So HF 3550 is a safety relief valve. It provides an opportunity for the local school boards to put in what's missing. Now, what I would ask the chair's indulgence today is I did stay up last night. I'm retired. I don't get paid for these things, but I did make a list of a supplemental testimony I would like to leave behind. What's missing? What's missing from our K through 12 health materials? And I'll just point out a couple of very quick things. On the growth and development and sexual health strand, it doesn't address physical development, cognitive development, puberty. They miss puberty. What takes place 5 of the 12 years are in school. It's not mentioned. Sleep, one of the major problems our teenagers face, not mentioned.
Mr. McCarthy, if you could kind of wrap up, and then we will definitely take your written testimony, but go
I
ahead.
would be very grateful to have these materials distributed, because this is what HR 3550 allows our school boards to put in their curricula and not rely on people who are apparently either unwilling or not capable of getting it done and then having it forced on our local school boards. This is wonderfully valuable safety relief valve. It fixes a very real problem, and I'm grateful for this committee's taking it up.
Thank you. And before we move on, I want to note to members that any of the written testimony, including the packet mentioned, are in your packet with House File 3550. They're behind that bill. So if you want to see any of that, that's where that is. And Ms. Kirsten, go ahead.
Co-chairs Bennett and Jordan and members of the committee, I'm Catherine Kirsten. I'm a senior policy fellow at Center of the American Experiment, and I'm here to talk about ethnic studies implementation. Ethnic studies implementation to date is marked by the same ideological bias and lack of transparency that has characterized this initiative from the beginning. Details were supposed to be laid out
in MDE's Ethnic Studies Working Group's implementation framework. But the department refused to release that document to the public when the group finished it in fall 2024. My organization was compelled to file a lawsuit to obtain it. Now, one reason, I suspect, for this lack of transparency is that the framework makes clear how the political activists who drafted the social studies standards intend to implement the K-12 Ethnic Studies Resistance Standard, which requires students to, quote, organize with others and engage in, quote, resistance to our nation's fundamental institutions. Well, on this front, ethnic studies implementation is going according to plan. We are already seeing it in our streets. Exhibit A. Just last month, Unidos Minnesota, an activist group that played a prominent role in drafting the ethnic studies standards, held a press conference urging students to walk out of school on January 23rd to join a march, rally, and day of action. Quote, no school, no work, no shopping. Target Corporation was a special focus. As one flyer warned, Hilton, Enterprise, Target, we are coming for you. Unidos, which trains young people in community organizing, is now promoting student walkout and organizing guides with its press conference co-sponsor, the activist Sunrise Movement. The Sunrise Movement's Rise Up student guide, for example, exhorts students to engage in monthly disruptions and mass non-cooperation. Quote, we are here to win a political revolution, this guide declares. Students have always been, quote, key to bringing down dictators, and strikes are vital to, quote, bring massive corporations to their knees. This is your guide to start winning at your school right now, it states. The guide goes on to lay out mass meeting templates and identifies roles to fill if your action, quote, might involve interactions with law enforcement. The final goal it proclaims is far larger than blocking immigration enforcement. It is to, quote, prove our power so we can pick bigger fights. Exhibit B. Who has been charged with writing new taxpayer-funded K-12 ethnic studies lesson plans? The University of Minnesota's highly politicized Center for Race, Indigeneity, Disability, Gender, and Sexuality Studies, or RIDGES. RIDGES resistance-themed lesson plans for sixth graders, for 12-year-olds, is typical. It's entitled Protest Art and the Movement for Black Life. Ethnic studies is shifting our public schools' mission from academics to political activism at a time when fewer than half of Minnesota students can read or do math at grade level. A society that uses public education to exploit vulnerable, easily manipulated young people in this way risks reaping the whirlwind. Thank you.
Thank you for that testimony, appreciate it. And if MDE, well, members, let's see what discussion arises here. If we need MDE, we'll call them back up. But do we have any member questions or comments? No? Pretty quiet bunch today. Oh, one, Representative Mueller, go ahead.
Actually, I have a question for MDE if they are still here. Sorry.
Testifiers can maybe move back to the chairs, and then if we need you, we'll call upon you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, and I appreciate you being here. It looks like the crud has us all, and we're all going down, so it's going to be great. Here we go. I just had a question. I was listening to the presentation on the health standards, and there's a couple of questions I have on the health standards that I can take offline. But I was looking at the social studies standards and the presentation that you had between these two. Specifically had written down, when you wrote down the benchmarks and all those things, that this is not to dictate methodology delivery. Like, this is supposed to be, here are the benchmarks. What you have in the presentation for social studies seems a radical shift in how to teach social studies. And so I just wanted a little bit more explanation on how that's coming about. And I know I saw that you had some pilots and what that looks like, but how is this going to affect teacher preparation programs? How is it going to affect people who have, like, this, as I said, I had the privilege of being an OFP this past semester of teaching social studies, and I mean, the way you are suggesting to do this is, I mean, it looks very robust, and so I just wanted to know how did this get involved in the standards-based, the standards creation discussion, Madam Chair?
And whoever would like to take that on, go ahead and please reintroduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Mueller. The shift to more content-based inquiry design model is a shift that the MDE team and many other states have shifted to increase the engagement of students in the learning of the standards, and less around, rote memorization or just factual, but really engage them in deep conversations so they can relate it to their own lives and embed it in their learning. So the shift is, we really are using this process with the social studies standards. I know that in other areas of academic standards revision, this is being considered. But in social studies, it was the focus, and the committee made the decision to move forward with this inquiry design model, just mainly for student motivation and student engagement in the process of learning.
Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Assistant Commissioner Burnham. I appreciate that. I guess as you said, that you're hoping possibly to also implement this in other academic standards. How are teacher preparation programs responding to anything like this? Because I know that you and I have had several discussions on the science of reading, and we got a lot of pushback from the teacher preparation programs and in higher education. This seems, as I said, while I don't disagree that this may be beneficial for students, this seems to be, as I said, it's a pretty massive shift, especially when it looks at disciplinary literacy and critical thinking, making sure that we're teaching how to think, not what to think. Those are amazing goals. And so I just wanted to know, how is that being implemented, or how is that change happening in our higher education? And that'll be my last question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Assistant Commissioner, go ahead.
Madam Chair, Representative, that is a great question, and one that I'll have to take back to my team. I don't have that information was with me, or I need to do some digging around that, but I will get back to you on that, as well as address your other questions and feedback as well.
Yeah, and thank you. That was a good question. I'd like to see that too. Our teacher prep programs obviously are going to have to change up some things to accommodate new ways to teach. Other member, we have Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't know if this question is for nonpartisan staff for MDE, but we've seen a huge timeline as far as developing this program here. My curious is, what has been the cost from start to, I look at this as being finished, what has been the cost to the department, to taxpayers, where'd those dollars come from, and what was the total cost?
Madam Chair, Representative Lawrence, you're speaking specifically to the health standards?
Well, we could break it up that way, health standards and then the social studies standards, because both have been a work in progress, and according to the timelines of when the start of the process to the end of the process. And I'm just curious, many of us came from finance. And so just the accountability of the dollars and what was invested in this process when dealing with the social studies standards, as well as the health standards.
Yeah.
Mr.
Ma-
Lee.
Madam Chair, Representative Lawrence, I will have to tag team maybe with nonpartisan staff, but I do remember for health standards, we got a one-time amount of around $227,000. That would cover, seeing some lip biting there. Maybe I got it around there, 270, somewhere around there where we had, maybe Ms. Para is ready to give the exact numbers, and then I can reflect on the social studies.
Ms. Para, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Representative Lawrence. In 2024, the legislature appropriated $627,000 for rulemaking and administrative costs related to health education standards. And that was a one-time appropriation available until June 30th, 2027.
And Madam
ahead,
Chair,
Mr.
Representative
Lee.
Lawrence, the number I was quoting, I believe, was around one-time limited funding for an FTE for a health standards specialist. I believe we had that funding for 2 or 3 years that it would cover. For social studies standards, I know there's a series of funding for ethnic studies implementation around grants and maybe around some other activities, but for the standard social studies standards, since we've already had them, we didn't get any funding for this initial round. We funded out of our just general fund. I don't have an accounting on hand for that. We can try to get an estimate, but that might be able to give an indication of what we spent on health standards. But
Okay.
that's something that we do every 10 years and for all other academic standards.
Okay.
Thank you. Representative Lawrence, thank you. And we won't continue the financial portion too much, being this is the policy committee, but I'll give you some leeway here. So,
Okay.
and they're not quite prepared either, I don't think, to deal with the financial parts. Thank you, Ms. Para, you are. Thank you for that. That was not a cut on you two. We didn't ask you to prepare for that. Anyway, go ahead, Representative Lawrence.
No, I appreciate that, and Madam Chair, thank you. And I realize that I threw that question out there, and I realize this is policy, but it was included in this presentation here. Because I do want to go one step further, I guess, on page 38, talks about grant information, talks about grants that are going to be given to help implement this program, which kind of where my question started at the beginning when I started investigating this is, where did those funds come from for the grants that are going to be offered to school districts to implement the ethnic studies?
Those were,
Go ahead.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Assistant Commissioner.
Representative, those grants were provided in the legislation for ethnic studies.
Okay.
Representative
Chair?
Lawrence?
Yeah, could I ask the amount?
Go ahead.
$700,000 over those 2 rounds of grants.
Okay.
Representative Lawrence?
Madam Chair, thank you. That concludes my questions. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Members, anybody else? Oh, go ahead, Representative Keeler.
Thank you. I just want to say something for the record as we as a testifier going sort of on and on about different organizations that encourage students to participate in what some of us believe really community engaging opportunities. I just want to also name the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers were also really instrumental in making sure that they encouraged a protest or a riot on January 6th. So if we're going to talk about what people are doing in organizations, encouraging people to be engaged in protests, let's just name them all. Thank you.
Members, anybody else? Pardon? Okay, looks good here. So members, thank you for the discussion. I want to thank our 2 MDE presenters here as well. That was a lot of work, so appreciate that. And you did a good job fielding those financial questions, even though we didn't ask you to prepare for that, so thank you. Members, while House File 3550 was posted for today's agenda, I feel we had a good discussion on the important topic of protecting students from grooming. We had a good presentation from the department. So with that, I'm going to delay consideration on House File 3550, although we may visit that bill at a later time. So I apologize to the testifiers, but we appreciated hearing from them as well. So members, that concludes today's agenda. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, February 25th. And with that, our committee is adjourned.